In today's show, we have another of our popular Dynamite Conspiracies episode where we talk about the Philadelphia experiment. Was this fact or merely fiction? Then we discuss the Voynich Manuscript. Is it a madman's ramblings? Or is it ancient undiscovered language? Or even alien text? Finally, we discuss the Flat Earth Society. Why do they believe the Earth is flat?
And now, the TNT Talk Show, daring to go where other podcasts fear to tread.
Hello, I'm Tony Fasulo, and I share the stage with my esteemed friend and colleague, Tayo Boya. Tayo, hello, my friend, once again. I hope you're keeping safe and well.
Yeah, I'm not too bad today, actually, Tony.
Oh, my goodness!
Yeah.
The mold has been thrown out. What's going on? You're actually sounding more upbeat.
Really? You're so easily fooled, Tony. What the hell? What are you going to do, eh?
You had me.
I can't believe you fell for that one, I swear. I can't believe you fell for that.
There was a green shoot of positivity there, and I was sucked in.
Which I have smashed down. Stamped on. I'm not going to have any of that nonsense, that optimism here, if you don't mind. Rubbish.
Oh,
anyway, that also gets me ahead of the curve for your next thing.
Oh, no. Come on,
hello,
I'm smiling
audience.
already. Say hi to the audience.
Hello, audience. I've already got the knife in, so it's fine this time. It's okay. Yeah. Got the knife in early this time.
Brilliant. Okay. Shall we move on with our show? Good, I'm steaming up my glasses here, just laughing so much. That's really good. Right, in today's show, we've got another one of our popular Dynamite Conspiracy episodes. And obviously, time permitting, of course, we'll try and cover a few subjects. But we'll start off with the Philadelphia experiment. What is it? And was it fact or fiction? Tyre, do you want to kick things off?
Okay, this is not one of mine, I believe.
I think this is mine. This is definitely one of mine. But what do you know about it?
There, in the 1943, I think it was. I might be 42. 1943.
Yeah.
The reports came in of a ship that was surrounded by a green haze, a green fog, and the ship disappeared. And it was an American military ship. It was called the USS Eldridge, and it disappeared from view in Philadelphia, in the port of Philadelphia, and reappeared. Well, I suppose at the time they didn't know, but this Eldridge suddenly reappeared in the port of Virginia, some 250 miles south, I believe, of Philadelphia, the port of Philadelphia. Not only did it sort of reappear suddenly, but it also reappeared 10 minutes earlier than it had disappeared. You know, when all the facts and figures were calculated, it appeared to have gone back in time as well as moved, teleported basically, location. About 20 minutes later, it reappeared back in Philadelphia. Well, depending on how you calculate the 20 minutes. Was it 20 minutes later or 10 minutes from, you understand what I mean?
10 minutes, I think. So it's 20 minutes in all from the north.
Right, exactly.
Norfolk place.
Right. Well, Norfolk. Yeah, okay, sorry. And then, unfortunately, when it reappeared, terrible things had happened to the sailors on ship. You know, some were severely injured, some were burned, some were actually fused into the metal of the ship. You know, and if they weren't already dead, they were dying in agony. It was pretty horrible thing to think about. And the idea that transpires, if you want to use the word transpires, that this had been an American American Navy experiment to make ships invisible, and somehow it had gone in horribly wrong. So I think that's about the gist of it.
Yeah.
I don't know if I may have got some details wrong, but
No. You're spot on actually with what the recounted story supposedly was. Although there's very little evidence that anyone has come forward regarding where this ship apparently, I mean, the ship existed for one. It then supposedly disappeared, and it was viewed by somebody called Carl M. Allen. And he was supposed to be a crewman on the SS Andrew Forsyth, if I've pronounced that right. And he was one of the people, it's a merchant ship, that he observed this thing happening. And as you say, it was a green sort of a effect. It sort of clouded the ship somewhat. And then the ship disappeared from view, only to return. And in this example, as you rightly said, some of the sailors had disappeared. Some had been melded into the part of the ship. So this is what this chap, Carl M. Allen, purports to have said. However, there's very little evidence, like I said, where other than him, that this report has been said, because he didn't report it as himself. He used a synonym of his name called Carlos Miguel Allende. Why? We don't know why. And he told this story, his account, to someone called Morris K. Jessup, who went on to write a book about UFOs, etc.
He had written the book first.
Yeah,
he had written the book earlier.
Yeah, but why did he account this story to this chap and not to other people? And this seemed to have grown. There doesn't seem to be any evidence of the death of any of the crew, despite this witness, this chap Carl M. Allen, saying that this is what happened. Also, he went on to say that this experiment was to do with Albert Einstein and Nikola Tesla. Nikola Tesla, sorry. But there's no evidence about this, because he quoted, if I can look at it here, on unified field theory, which he wasn't an expert on. How he could make that claim as what was being done here is all a bit up in the air. So I know that this story is quite well known, because if you search on Google, you will find information about the Philadelphia experiment. And they even did a film about it, which played on this story. And this is probably where it sits in people's minds, because the film, I mean, you're an expert on films. I mean, I don't know how long ago this film came about.
I remember watching it in the late 90s or
90s. There you go.
Late 90s or early noughties. Early noughties. But I think there were a couple, because there's another one called The Triangle, with one of my one of the actresses for whom I've carried a torch for a while. Catherine Bell? Catherine Bell. She was. I
think we spoke to her before about her before. You seem to have quite a soft spot for her.
Yes, I think she gets under my skin so much. She's yes.
So does she hang on while we're talking about that? Is it because she gets under your skin because you like her, or you dislike her?
No, I like her. I think she's very easy to look at. Not difficult to look at at all.
Very
that was one, but that was more to do with the Bermuda Triangle than the Philadelphia. But it was woven into it in the sense that it was because it went through the triangle or something, and it was quite complex. But there is an actual film called The Philadelphia Experiment, which was a bit come see, come saw, not really sort of up to scratch. They took it as far as they could, I think, and they moved away from the story. So actually, I think that you're talking about the chap who was supposedly on a ship called, I believe it's actually the Forsyth. I don't know how you
Forsyth. It's spelled Foxtrot Uniform. Well, I'll say Ruseth. You can understand that. FUR.
Just a word spelling of
don't know how it's pronounced.
weird spelling of it. Anyway, so I think he approached. Sorry, the name of the author again. What was the name of
It
the author again?
was Morris K. Jessup.
Yes, he approached Jessup because Jessup was actually famous at the time for being the author of a book, which I think almost one of the first books, if not the first book, to actually say that UFOs and aliens could be taken seriously. That was the first time that someone had done it, and the guy made a lot of money out of it, and it was quite famous. So if you were going to contact someone, it kind of makes sense that you want to talk to someone who had an open mind and wouldn't necessarily have a closed mind straight away. And the Jessup, the author was Jessup, right?
Jessup, yeah, Jessup, who's the author?
Jessup also he had had the hit, but the hit was a few years previously and nothing since. So he jumped on the horse and and he carried it forward. If it hadn't been for him, the whole thing would have died. So he got the other book out. Sadly for him, the other book wasn't as successful as the UFO book, and but as sometimes happens, I remember this is the same case with Phil Schneider.
Yeah.
It follows the same kind of trajectory. Someone comes along, they make sort of claims which are pretty out there.
Fantastical.
They're fantastical. And you think, well, there's nothing to it. And then they go and die a mysterious death, which sort of brings us back to think, well, hold on. Why did they, what happened? So Phil Schneider died a mysterious death. If people don't know who Phil Schneider is, please look on our backlog in Buzzsprout. You'll find the episode. Phil Schneider and UFO Conspiracy. And this gentleman, Jessup, he actually sent some papers to a friend of his and says, look after these. I'll explain to you more about it when we meet, very shortly I'll come and see you, but be very careful and watch out. And then he was found dead in his car for carbon monoxide poisoning, with the pipe, so an exhaust run into the car. So if he was about to commit suicide, why would he have said, I'll come and see you shortly and explain what's going on? Why was he telling his friends to be careful? And basically, his death, just like Phil Schneider, just doesn't add up. There's something off there. So we don't know. And there's credible evidence that he had been visited by the Office of Naval something. I forgot what it's called. Office of Naval Research, Office ONS, Office of Naval Studies. It's sort of like naval intelligence.
Yeah.
There's credible evidence that he had been visited by them shortly after he published the book. And like everyone says, if there was nothing to it, why would the Navy be interested? I mean, there's a reason, but at first blush, it does appear to be, it does appear to give the what's what I'm looking for, the appearance that there's smoke there. And obviously, we all know if there's smoke, there's usually fire.
It is a strange one. I mean, some of the things that Alan claimed was that the US government were trying one experiment, which was probably to do with invisibility, to prevent the ships from being seen from enemy radar, a bit like stealth technology is used on planes. So they were trying to adopt this on the ships, and inadvertently they'd stumbled on some teleportation. But the thing is, if that was something that they stumbled upon, you'd have thought they tried to recreate it, because that would be something incredible to continue with. And we've heard nothing along those lines ever since. So had that been successful and truthful, then you would have thought that the Navy would have continued it and try and refine it, do it again, and we would probably hear more about it.
There is a reason why it is said that the Navy didn't, and that was because of the time displacement, that they were very worried that they were messing around with time and they didn't really know what they were doing. That's the reason why they didn't want, because they didn't expect the loss of time. That was never considered to be a reasonable outcome of the experiment. So when it moved and it was displaced, rather than just disappeared, actually moved location. So they messed with space and they messed with time. And I think rightly, if you weren't expecting those results, I don't think you want to press that switch again because
Indeed.
you don't know.
Well,
So anyway, that's the answer to your question. So please continue.
okay. But is there any evidence of the ship being seen in Norfolk, Virginia, where it was allegedly disappeared to? Who provided that evidence? Because if he was, as he said, on the Andrew Farusith viewing the Eldridge, how would he know it had moved unless someone else had come forward to report of seeing the ship in this other location? There's no one saying that. No one's come forward. So how did he make this claim? It sounds a bit far-fetched. What I'm going to propose is a more rational argument. You want to jump in? Go on.
Before you do that, let's be cognizant of the fact that the ship does have logs. I mean, ships have logs.
Indeed.
The ship's logs say that on that day, the Eldridge was not in Philadelphia, it was not in Virginia, it was in New York.
Oh,
so yes. So the ship's log was says it was in New York. The crew on the ship say that on that day they were in New York. Okay, and a lot of these people, a lot of the crew members who were there on the ship on that day, lived into the noughties.
Okay.
And if you ever came across one of them and you started going on about the Eldridge, according to this report I read, it said anyone who bothered to repeat this story to any of them reportedly got an earful for their trouble because they were fed up of hearing this story over the decades, and they took very short shrift.
Oh dear.
Yes. And by the way, I'll just round this up. Does it not strike everyone as being really strange that the Navy went ahead and conducted this experiment in broad daylight in a pretty busy harbor?
Indeed.
Yeah.
That again would sort of throw some stuff on that story. Indeed. I mean, there were some tests done on ships. They were, because this was during the Second World War. Yeah, indeed. And they wanted to counter the effects of enemy mines, because some of the mines that were used by the Germans in particular they could detect the a magnetic field of a ship. So it wasn't an impact mine. It would, soon as it detected a large enough magnetic field, it would set off. So what the American Navy discovered, that the ships, by traveling through the water, picked up magnetism, and they actually wanted to get rid of this increased magnetism it's an earth effect, it's a known effect, to try and remove this magnetism. So if they did encounter one of these mines, it's less likely to explode. And so they did do experiments of passing a high current across the side of a ship to degauss it. And that's a term that's used, and we know nowadays, well, not so much now, but there was a time where we used to, this is for our youthful audience out there who don't know what that means. We used to have TVs with a CRT, a cathode ray tube. And over a period of time, the front would get really staticky, because that's how it operated. And it would have a mechanism involved which would degauss the screen, and it would do it automatically over a set period, which removed all this extra static. And this was early adoption of this technology, was used in a okay, I'm simplifying it, on the sides of the ship, so their magnetism would be reduced, and in so the effect of these bombs on the side of the ship. So if there was any experiment done, more than likely it could be linked to that. But as you rightly say, if the logs show the ship wasn't even in the harbour where Alan purported to be on the merchant ship, then this is a load of nonsense anyway. But the other thing, subsequently, someone went to try and find his station, whether he was on this merchant ship, and they couldn't find any evidence of him being on that ship either. So
not surprising.
This whole story seems to have been a ruse, almost, to gain traction for a book. So you create a story.
Someone wrote to Jessup first. So I don't think Jessup went out of his way. I think the story came to Jessup and he ran with it and probably didn't do his due diligence. I think if he had done his due diligence, he wouldn't have been able to write the book. So he was out to recapture his former glory of, after he'd written that UFO book. And I don't think he did his due diligence. And I think the reason that he was visited by the Office of Naval Research, whatever the heck the thing is called, let's just say Naval Intelligence. The reason that he was visited by Naval Intelligence is because it was slightly to do with what you've just alluded to, that the Navy had been conducting these experiments at the time for the very reasons that you're saying. So what they were doing was they were wrapping, they were trailing long lines of metallic, I think that's supposed copper wire, over the sides of the ship, and they were running certain amount of current, 400 volts or something. I don't remember the exact figures, and this had the effect of degaussing, which is reducing the magnetic field strength emitted by the ship. In turn, that made these ships invisible to German mines. And they actually started the experiments in 1941, and they were actually using them by 42 and 43. They had been quite successful. And then the Germans started to catch on, and then things changed again. So it was still quite a sensitive technology. And if this guy was writing books about it, I suppose they would have wanted to know, exactly what he knew and so on and so forth, which explains the men in black appearing, on his doorstep, if you like. Absolutely. What it does not do is it doesn't explain his death. Although he was in bad health. He had a car accident. He was in pain much of the time, and his wife had left him. His second book wasn't that successful any longer. So maybe he just wanted to, like I think might have happened with Phil Schneider. A very similar situation where things weren't looking very good. And the last thing they did was to exit the world in such a way that it would punish us for not believing them. If you see what I mean. We would think,
I'm not sure about that.
Well, it's because, I think that's the simplest explanation. I think that's the Occam's razor here, that they go out in such a way where you make a bit of a splash, you say something mysterious, and then you leave the planet. And then we'll all be left wondering, was there something? That's what we're doing now. We're wondering. If he just died an ordinary death, we wouldn't be talking about him. So there we go.
Okay. I think we've got enough there to make up a sum up. So in your opinion, was the Philadelphia experiment fact or just a hoax?
I think it was a load of bollocks, to be honest. It's just point blank. Let's just be honest.
I think it was a good story that caught on, because it was quite fantastical. I mean, the thing about a good story is if there's some element of truth about it. In other words, he was referring to a ship which did exist. He was referring to a merchant ship that he was on that also did exist. But whether he was on it is another matter, but they both existed. So first off, you start off with some truth that people can relate to. Then to talk about this experiment from his viewpoint, based on two elements of truth, we now take his recount as possible. But because it was so fantastical and he couldn't back it up with any other evidence, made it a hoax, like you say. And I'm agreeing with you. I think it was just a story, a hoax, something that's been perpetrated for another reason. We don't know what that reason is, but clearly it was to give him notoriety. And if you think about it, 1943 was when this supposedly happened, and we're talking about it today in 2023.
Yep.
So it certainly gave him that, but overall, the story behind it, I like you, rubbish.
Yep.
Okay.
Before we move on, just one last thing, in case anyone's wondering who Taya's banging on about, is Catherine Bell is Catherine with a C, and she's a British actress. So if anybody wants to know who is this, you can look her up. Okay.
Okay.
There's a plug for you, Catherine. You owe me a dinner or something.
Brilliant. Right, let's move on. The next one we want to discuss is something, a really strange one, actually. It's a thing called the Voynich Manuscript. And is this some madman's ramblings, or is it ancient text that we haven't been able to decipher? Taya.
Rather, you presented this. And by the way, the answer to your question is, I believe neither. But when you get into it, I'll explain.
Okay. Voynich Manuscript. Let me get my bit of info about it. This is really weird. This is something that's been, they believe, carbon dated, although you have doubts about carbon dating mechanism. But anyway, they've been carbon dated into the 14th century and during the Italian Renaissance. And it's a manuscript which consists of roughly, and I say roughly, 240 pages. But it's written in a language that no one can decipher. And we've had code breakers, even from the Second World War, try and decipher this, and they can't. And also, what's interesting about this manuscript is there's pictures, drawn pictures, some of them quite detailed, that look like, I don't know, fungus, some are plants, some are all sorts of things. And it's like, what is this? Some are crude, some are really detailed, alongside the writing describing, which looks like describing these plants, creatures, of which again cannot be identified either. So what is this Voynich manuscript? And the name, by the way, only comes from somebody called Voynich who bought the book in some old shop in the 19th century, 1912, I believe. So it was just named after him because
20th century, the 1912, 20th
yes,
century.
1912, yeah. It was named after him just for ease, because there was no name on this book, and we have no idea what this book was about.
Very well done. Yes, that's a good summary. You said, is it a hoax? Well, sorry, what were the options you gave me?
Well, was it a madman's ramblings, or was this some ancient text that we haven't yet worked out? Or I can always add in aliens as well, but there we go.
Oh my goodness. Well, some people actually think it might have been written by an alien who had somehow crash landed on Earth and was writing down his knowledge, if you like.
Yeah.
It's a bit weird that he did so in a language that no one would subsequently understand.
Well, maybe that was only the language he knew. And also, because he crash landed on the planet at that time, there was no other forms of communication because there's no technology really. All he had available was paper and a writing implement, and that's all he did. I don't know.
To whom was he trying to communicate?
That's a good question.
Right, because if you try to communicate to humans, then you'd use a human language. And obviously, if he's writing about his own planets and things, who is he expecting to come and pick up that book? So I don't think that's a reasonable explanation at all. I think we should actually just stop talking about aliens for quite a long time, because I don't take them seriously. Okay, that's not okay. There's another option, which is my preferred option. The book is well, the book is an interesting book. First of all, the author seems to display what I would describe as an unhealthy obsession with naked women and bathtubs, because it's an entire section of the book that's dedicated to bathtubs and naked women. And if there's some kind of cosmic message in there, so I can't extract what it's got to do with naked women and bathtubs. It's to me, it looks like a 14th century porn section, if you like.
Oh.
I've had a look at some of the pictures. It's very, 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 very mild by today's standards. But of course, back in those days, I think it was said that Victorian men, this was Victorian men, were what, 400 years later?
Yep.
Victorian men got very excited that they could catch the glimpse of a woman's ankle.
Yes, I do remember
Right?
that.
Yes. So these were times when, you know, even the drawing of a naked woman was quite interesting. We have that. Then we have the, like I said, peculiar obsession with bathtubs, which doesn't seem to be neither here nor there. And then we have the rest of it. The thing about it is that apparently it is written with a script. It's not random scribblings.
No,
There
it's
are
not.
some kind of alphabet. There's a consistent alphabet there, but no one can figure out. No one can translate into anything else. Some people have tried to translate into Hebrew or one of the Aramaic languages, which is of course Hebrew, Arabic, and what's the other one? I can't remember now. Anyway, the Aramaic languages. Others have tried very hard to make other things out of it, but everyone has always failed. No one has gotten anywhere with it, even though they've said, "Oh yeah, I've cracked it," and then upon further investigations, like, "No, you haven't. This is a bunch of hooey." There are pictures in there of some, like I said, some detailed pictures of fauna and flora with which we humans are unfamiliar.
Yeah.
So we ask, well, the question then becomes, so what is this? Is it a hoax? But who's got time to put in so much effort into 240 pages of gibberish? Turns out that it might have been a gentleman whose name I don't want to repeat, because if it was,
Yeah, if you don't know, if it's...
no, I mean, if he's dead. I mean, long dead and everything.
Okay.
You can't libel a dead man. He's been dead for centuries. But I don't think we should make people famous if they were rogues. And it seems as if this chap who might have written this was a rogue who sold the book to an emperor. And it was meant to contain alchemical secrets. Okay. So, he claimed, may have claimed that he found the book somewhere or whatever, discovered, and he sold it to the emperor on the understanding that somebody would be able to translate it for the emperor, and then the emperor would make a lot of money and gain a lot of power. So this is the story now. How I've come to that conclusion is just that I've read it about it on the internet, but I don't know how the people on the internet came to that conclusion themselves. So I'm repeating something I don't fully understand, and I can't grant it any gravitas. To me, it's just someone's ideas. Supposedly the trajectory of the book was from northern Italy, Florentine, I think it's called, or Florence, somewhere like, is there such a place? Yeah,
Florence, yeah.
Right, from there, in Europe, all the way towards, I think, ended up in France. I don't know where Voynich got a hold of it.
No, it doesn't say where he got it.
400, yeah. Where's Voynich himself? Where was he based?
Good question. I don't actually know
Berlin,
a lot about him.
I think Berlin or somewhere. So anyway, it was traveling around Europe and appearing from time to time. So there are references to it from time to time, but like I said, it wasn't named anything. God doesn't have an author's name or anything. But when this Voynich finally got a hold of it, and then he was a bookseller, by the way, and was trying to sell it, it became the Voynich Manuscript.
Yeah, 1912.
And then it ended up in a museum, not a museum, in a university, rare manuscripts catalog in America.
University of Arizona.
There you go.
Yeah, but they don't know what to make of it. Also, it looks like, I mean, the pages weren't originally numbered.
Hmm.
And there was 240 pages. Well, again, why they're not sure is because some of the pages are quite unusual. They're not your standard book because they actually fold out and contain other
Yeah.
stuff. So when you fold it back in, is that a page or do you count the other bits? So that's a bit confusing. Also, they believe that some of the pages had been removed anyway because the book wasn't complete. They believe that could be roughly 272 pages, but they only currently have 240 because there was a numbering system of the pages, but the numbering happened much later because those are numbers that can be deciphered. It's the writing itself and the pictures that can't be deciphered. Although I didn't know about the bathtubs and the women. Are they human? That was something I wasn't aware
Oh,
of.
the women are human. Women are human. There are three sections, 3 or 4 sections, if I recall. There's the bathtub section. There's the flora section, which is about plants. The fauna, which is about animals, and I think there's one. I may be wrong, but I believe there's one to do with alchemy as well, which is transmutation of something into gold, whatever the alchemists do. So, yeah, those were the like sections of the book.
But it is a really odd one because, as you rightly say, why it's caused a lot of intrigue. This is, as you said, why go to all the effort? I mean, your theory is quite a good one for as an example. But why go to all this effort in a language that is not available to anybody? I mean, what's the point of giving somebody something if that was indeed the reason to create it to impress an emperor or somebody, if they then can't decipher it either? Or what was the author, whoever that was?
No, it's the mystery, isn't it?
Well, indeed, but also if you're writing something, at one point you do want someone to gain something from it. Otherwise, what's the point?
Oh,
So
money.
yeah, but what's the point of getting the money if they can't decipher it? Do you see what I mean? There has to be a value in the item at some point that has to be realized. And
the people of that time still believed in dragons and witches and things. They were burning witches. Okay. So if someone says that this is a secret book and this is a secret tongue, and all you have to do is to find the right wise person to read it for you, you will pay for it. In the expectation, because you might give it to someone to have a look at it, and the person will notice, as I've already said, that this is a script. It's not gibberish in the sense that it's not scribbling.
yeah,
Whoever looks at it will go, yeah, I can actually make out that this is what seems to be a proper language. Just we can't read it, and you've got a lot of money. You're an emperor. You got a lot of money. You pay because you're hoping to extract gain from that investment. It's an investment as far as the emperor is concerned. It's not throwing money away. And then the hoaxer takes the money and he skips town, never to be seen again.
yeah, and has no way of translating it either. But
exactly.
But the thing is, what they have discovered with this manuscript was the writing seems to be how we write in the Western world from left to right. But the writing is not labored, if you know what I mean. It's written from someone who seems to find that the language is common to them. Because let's say you had to write on a piece of paper in the English language, which is your language. You would be able to write smoothly, and the pressure on the paper, the flow of your hand and the writing would show that there's no awkward stops. And this is the same. So whoever was writing this, it was a natural written language. So where the heck did they get this language from? This then asks the question of, again, I'm going to bring it up, and I know you don't like it, something off-worldly, because it's not anything that we are familiar with. So is it something which has been written by someone? I mean, we could also dismiss it and say it's a madman's ramblings. We could. That's an example that could be valid. But some of the drawings, some of the fauna are things that don't appear in our society. We don't know about it. Hence why, where's this come from? Has he got an elaborate imagination, whoever this was? Or are they genuinely trying to speak in their native language in a written form and describe some of the things on their planet if they're off-worldly?
I don't think you pay enough respect to the genius of warped humans. Not even warped, just people are really clever. Some people are astonishingly clever. I follow a couple of YouTube channels that explain how some magic tricks are done, and it's always mind-boggling stuff. That you could swear on the stack of Bibles that this particular magician is using actual witchcraft because you can't, for the life of you, imagine how did he do that? And then they explain, and then you think, oh, that's really silly. Yes, why didn't I think of that? So I've come to really, really respect how devious some people are, and some of these magicians, they are prepared to spend hours and hours making every feasible combination of cards. One guy said he spent that there are 2,600 and something variations that he needed to do to prepare ahead, because then he'd ask you, you have a free choice, just choose a card, but it'd be ready no matter what card you choose, which card you choose, you chose, and it took him that long to set it up. So people are prepared to, if they're invested in something, they've got the time, and what else was there to do in the 14th century? There was no Netflix or anything, and if you wanted to make a bomb, that's how you made a bomb if you were a crook. So I think it's very interesting what you said about studying the pressure on the handwriting. Maybe he tried a few pages and threw them away first, and then he got into the rhythm of the thing. Possibly he was translating from in his head and actually writing nonsense down or something. Who knows? Who can tell?
It's just the sum of the words. If it was total nonsense, you wouldn't see repeating patterns, which they've discovered have been repeated, as if you have common words that are used in common places. But they're still obviously scratching heads as to what it is. I'm hopeful, well, that's the right word to use. I would hope that someday, with the advent of computers and AI and all the rest of it, if this was looked at again with some real detail, they will crack it, and we would discover that it does make sense. I'm hopeful that that is the case. I wouldn't want this to be some madman's book. I would want it to be something of genuine, where it came from. Again, that would be open, but it would be fascinating to have a physical example of some new, I don't know, undiscovered human or somebody in some dark, distant place, and having their own language, or my favorite, an alien that rolling your eyes at me, that was able to be on our planet for a while but decided to write in their language, which made it a fascinating book. No.
No. sorry, man. It's a con artist did something. If you're writing something, maybe you just tell a story in your head. It's got nothing to do with the pictures that you're drawing. That's one way to fit in the text. So it'd be a picture of a plant, your drawing of a plant, and then you just in your head you go, when I was 12 years old, I went to the market with my mother, and this and that happened to me, and you're telling your own story, and then you just switch it up so that you just different things, and you're telling this script or language that maybe you yourself have invented. Who knows? So it's nothing. It's just, and that's only to explain the evenness or the pressure that you've mentioned. Otherwise, I'd just say you're just making it up as you went along.
So it was pure gibberish because you
Pure
believe that
gibberish.
it was.
That's why we can't crack it, because there's nothing to crack.
Okay. So you think it is complete nonsense? I mean, for the benefit of our listeners and viewers, if you go online, you can find copies of this. Just have a look at the sort of things that are in it. And just to spell it for you, if you did a search on any search engine for the Voynich Manuscript, I'll spell it. It's Voynich. So if you do a search for Voynich or Voynich Manuscript, you should be able to find it, and you can see pictures of it, of what is contained. And it is quite baffling. You look at the actual pictures and you think, goodness me, this is stuff I'd never seen before. Flora, the writing, the pictures of, well, the pictures, yes, I can see now. I've just done another search. But the writing, when he has the columns, the bits that go in the column, there's some replication, and it is really quite bizarre. And they've got some idea of some of the letters, so they think. And some of the drawings are completely, and one of them seems to show a dragon or some sort of
Dragon with
animal.
a seahorse kind of
Seahorse
dragon.
with and castles and the fauna and flora, which doesn't look like anything we've seen before. And yeah, it's really, really quite bizarre. But have a look. It's well worth having a look, because then that will put what we're describing here into context. But Tyre, so what's your final conclusion? Voynich Manuscript.
Load of bollocks.
That's your word of the day today.
That's my word of the day today. A load of bollocks, man.
I'm not quite like you. I'm hopeful that it is actually something that's quite, possibly has something more romantic about it, in terms of there is some language there that is to be deciphered, rather than just simply a mad.
Don't forget which one of the two of us is the optimist. It ain't me.
Indeed. Okay. All right, we've concluded that one. Let's leave that one be for now, and I'll leave that up to our audience to decide what they think of this particular manuscript. Right. Time permitting, we've got time to cover the next one.
Okay.
Which is the flat Earth theory. Why is this traction? Why do people believe it? What's your view, Tyre? Because it's quite prevalent at the minute.
At one time I knew about it. At one time I knew what happened. I've now forgotten, because, well, and to reveal something to the audience, I think we can reveal that this is a backup topic. So it's not really research that I've done very recently, but some time ago, when we were considering talking about this, I did some research on it, and it transpires that someone began the flat Earth theory as a joke. Now, I can't remember who it was, or even what. I think it was maybe the 18th century or the 19th century. Someone flat Earth joke, and the blooming thing took off. So this guy started saying as a joke, and it took off. It reminds me of I don't know his name now. I've forgotten his name. The chap who started that religion where you go into a room and then they reset you or something. What's it called again?
A Scientology.
Yeah, you remember he wrote
Ron L. Hubbard.
That's the one. Ron
L. Hubbard. Yeah.
Hubbard, who wrote. He wrote a work of fiction, and then people took it seriously for some funny reason, and then people are now taking it as a religion.
Yeah.
This is what happens. So you really got to be careful when you go around making jokes, because you never know what people are going to end up taking seriously. And what is fascinating about the Flat Earth Society, people who believe in Flat Earth, is that there's nothing you can tell them. There's no test that you can give them that will convince them to move away. In a way, they remind me very much of evolutionists. You can't ask them to say, look, what can I show you? What would you need to see in order for you to change your mind. In fact, the evolutionists have actually told me one thing, which is they want to see a rabbit in the Cambrian what's it called, layer, in the Cambrian layer, which fossil layer. So at least you go, well, okay, if I can show you a rabbit in the Cambrian fossil layer, then you'll change your mind. And they go, yes, so fine enough. But with the Flat Earth Society, there's nothing. If you take them up into an aircraft, people have actually gone up in an aircraft and they've still found a reason to say that's not real. They've actually seen the curvature of the Earth with their own eyes, and they've come up with some weird theory about, the sun shining at a funny angle or something. Or whatever. So I don't know what you can. What can you actually? What you can see, I'm speechless. I don't know. You can take them to the beach and say, look at the ship. Look at the way it disappears over the horizon. Okay, it disappears from the bottom up. The only way you can explain that is with a curve. Nothing else explains that. It's not getting smaller and smaller and smaller in a straight line. It's actually disappearing. That's why the mast is the top of the mast is the last thing you see. You can't. And they say, nope, it's the flat Earth. It's like, but can't you see it?
I mean, this is the entrenched view. This is what happens. There's confirmation bias here. If you don't have a point of reference initially, and someone says something, you have nothing to compare it against because you may not have thought about it. And whoever then explains that view makes it sound credible with the evidence that they provide, which you as an individual have no point of reference. So you can accept it and think, well, that makes sort of sense with the logic that you apply, rather than asking for further evidence to back up what they're saying. So you can take it on board, and they will then present you with further, in quotes, evidence to reinforce that point of view. So you've got this image now, this belief, and that's what it is, based on this rogue evidence that you now believe wholeheartedly. And those people you get it from repeat the same thing, so you now believe that as fact. So when something comes along that goes against what you say, it's rather than listen and go, really? And then check yours out, more often than not, for self-preservation purposes, we dismiss it. It's an act to protect ourselves because we've now invested in this theory, this belief that we've got. We're happy with it. All of a sudden, a separate belief or theory comes along that poo-poos what we've invested in. And we don't like that as humans. We absolutely detest it. So changing our viewpoint is really tough once it's been made. So it takes a monumental amount of effort to change someone's viewpoint. It's them wanting to change or wanting to be more open to ideas. Otherwise, they're entrenched. And that means no matter what you say, no matter what evidence you provide, they'll be dismissed. There comes a point when you even want to look at it. And this is the problem. But again, it comes from right at the very dawn of all this is, who do you trust? If you trust somebody, you'll take what they say on board. It's like, it's part of our preservation. I think you've mentioned it. When you're born and you're being brought up, your parents are the ones that are giving you shelter, warmth, food, the rest of it. So you trust them based on their actions towards you because it's a good response. So you trust them. And so if they say something to you as a child growing up, you will trust what they say without criticizing it and take it on board. And this is where beliefs are created, because you're receiving that point of view in an early stage and you're not mature enough yet to question what that is. So going back to our topic in terms of flat Earth, we have to question the people that come up with the theories who say the Earth is flat, but back it up with evidence, not just a throwaway comment, it's because of this, that you've observed.
Mm.
But as you've said in the topic we were talking about before, magicians, you will look at a trick and you don't know how it's been done. You could believe that it's magic when it's just lack of knowledge on our part of how it's been done. The same is this: is do you trust the people coming forward with evidence that is repeatable and refutable because it's can be demonstrated several times from other people as well, or do you believe your original people who told you based on their limited evidence, but because you heard it first, that's the one that's made your point of view and your opinion? So it's a big mix. It's difficult.
Well, my problem is this: I don't understand what's in it for anybody to keep perpetuating that the Earth is round. Who's making money out of this? You see, this is the problem with the flat Earth things. Like, there's usually, if there's a conspiracy, usually somebody is gaining something from it. Who is gaining what from pretending that the world is round if it's actually flat?
Well, there could be. You can turn that on its head. People who are perpetuating the flat Earth are getting money because they're talking about it and people are going to listen. So they're paying. They've written books. Some books have been written about flat Earth. People are buying that. So when there's money to be made, you want to increase the conspiracy about it. You want to make it out that everybody's lying. The truth is it's flat.
Yes, but you're misunderstanding. You're actually arguing, I think, in a funny kind of way, you're arguing my point.
Yes.
That if the flat earthers are making money from it by selling their books and whatever, no one is making money from saying that the earth is round. There's no benefit. No one. What is the benefit of saying the world is round? It was just the world is round. Yeah, and?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Indeed. It's no benefit. No.
This flat earthers say, government conspiracy to keep us all sort of, enthralled and enslaved with this mentality. So that what? This is where it brings. So that what? I just don't see who is benefiting. Because what's that? You're Italian. What's that? Quo bono? Qui bono? What is that thing? Who
Pro
benefits?
bono? No, the pro bono is
no,
nobody.
Pro bono
is doing it for free, isn't it?
Qui bono? What is who?
Oh, I don't know. That's Latin, not Italian.
All right, what is it in Latin? Quo bono. Who benefits?
Yeah.
Who benefits? This is the problem. Who benefits? There's nobody benefits. There's no point. And this so-called lie has been being perpetuated for thousands of years with no benefit to anyone. It's just
because if we go back into history, they did believe that the Earth was flat.
Yeah, at first we thought the Earth was flat. Then we realized it can't be. That's how we came to reckon that the Earth is round. So hang on. If the Earth was flat, X, Y, Z would happen. In actual fact, we see A, B, C. Therefore,
the evidence that the answers don't correlate what we originally thought. So
it just mounts up, it just mounts up. And every other object we see in the sky, by the way, is also spherical. So
the
why
moon,
are we
that's round.
Why are we flat? What is it? Man. I think we were going to do this episode once. So I was actually sort of watching some of these videos and reading some things about it. And these people are so super committed. I mean, there's one pilot who does his head in. He said, look, I'll actually fly you, all right? And we will map everywhere we're going. And then as I'm flying from A to B, from B to C, you draw your map and what you think is happening. And then you'll find that your map cannot explain the amount of time it is taking. Because my path will be shorter and quicker than your path.
Yeah.
Right? And then you can explain to me, well, how did we get from point A to point B? Which according to you would have to go all this distance, and yet I've actually taken you through this distance.
What was his answer?
No one took him up on the challenge.
Oh, really?
No.
Do you remember not that long ago, there was an American guy who was convinced that the Earth was flat, and he wanted to prove it by building a rocket that went up and take photos from above? Homemade rocket, by the way.
A homemade rocket?
Homemade rocket, yeah. And he got the bits together to build the rocket, and the rocket blew up and he died.
Oh, no.
Apparently,
Seriously?
yeah. He died, yeah, because he tried to prove it and he had a mishap because the rocket went
Oh,
up and he crashed back
oh,
down.
yes. Ah, okay. Now you mention it, I vaguely remember. I remember the crash rather than why he was up there in the first place. Yes.
Yeah,
The parachutes didn't deploy on the way back down.
something, yeah, it didn't work,
So
and he
no,
crashed back and he died because of it. Yeah, to prove this thing.
that's not a good death, you know. That's what to say
No,
that.
for doing what?
Why not put a camera on board rather than put
Yeah,
yourself
put
on
yourself
board?
on. But we wanted to see it for himself, and that was
Oh, I see.
his view. You see, there's a flat Earth society. You
Yeah.
know, don't you? Yeah.
Yeah.
And but in the UK, in Britain, for instance, there are 4,000 members. I would love to get one of them on our show.
But yeah.
Well, yeah,
Is
just to
that
see.
is that the show when I'm actually absent because I don't want to waste my time with that? Is that the show when one of us isn't going to be here, man? Because that's just a complete waste of time and energy. I mean, if we did a show on conspiracies, didn't we? And why people believe in conspiracies.
Yeah, we did.
From that point of view, it'd be interesting to interrogate this person. So, why do you not believe in the
yeah.
round of like everybody else is? And so many, there's just so much proof, there's so much evidence, man. That
But
I don't know.
It stems back from what we said. It's the trust element. For whatever reason, something they feel that we're being controlled wholeheartedly. And whilst there may be some truth in that, in small degrees, it's not the total truth. But people make that leap and they say, oh, we're being controlled. This is the way it is. So we don't trust them. And them meaning the establishment.
There must be a reason. There must be a reason why we're being controlled. So there must be a reason why they're selling us this round Earth. And what I'm trying to say is I can't find a reason. And no one's ever told me this is the reason, this is the benefit to the government. This is if it's the world government or the reptiles or aliens, what is the benefit? There is no, I can't find a benefit. So why is anybody doing it? It's like basically, who cares if the world is round or flat? If it turns out the world is flat, okay, the world is flat. I don't have any beef with it. No one's got a dog in the fight. So what's the problem?
I don't know. It's just, I don't know. It's just an odd one. I'm lost. But okay. I mean, I'm mindful of the time though. So what's your final sum up on this final topic?
Load of bollocks.
You kept the same. Well done. All three.
Load of bollocks. That would be the title of this episode, actually.
No, we can't put that.
I know.
Okay, but it'd be funny. Indeed.
It would have been funny, yes.
Absolutely. Okay, with that, unfortunately, we have reached the end of the show for another week.